Hi everyone, my name is Jimmy Smith and welcome to episode number 79 of the Rambler podcast, where we are passionate about sharing what makes Cathedral Prep the standard of excellence. And today we're really excited to have Csir on as a guest. John graduated from Cathedral Prep in 2006 and continued his education at Gannon University, where he earned his bachelor's degree in business administration with concentrations in finance, management, and Spanish. He currently serves as the CFO and controller for Baldwin Brothers, a fifth-generation nationwide real estate company with ownership and operations based here in Erie, Pennsylvania. John previously served as a full-time missionary in the Dominican Republic with Meeting God in Missions, founded by Edinburgh Hall of Famer Jim McDonald. He served as director of children's ministries at First Alliance Church. He also has served in multiple roles with National Logistics Network, owned by fellow prep grads Josh Mezzacapo and Anthony Ciotti. John also spent 6 years coaching football here at Cathedral Prep from 2007 to 2012. And lastly, John, alongside his wife Dina, are co-owners of Dina's, a fast casual restaurant inside the flagship City Food Hall, where they serve fresh, authentic Dominican food to those who work, live, and visit downtown Erie. And I think I like this note. You'll be pleased to know that Dina does the cooking, not John. Mm-hmm. And of all the roles he's had, his most important impressions has been that as a husband to Dina and dad to three beautiful children, 8-year-old Nehemiah, 6-year-old Noah, and 2-year-old Faith. So John, thanks so much for taking the time to come on down and do this.
Thanks for having me, Jimmy.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
I think it's pretty fun. As a kid growing up, for me, wanting to go to prep, I'd go to the vet stadium, go see football games. You graduated in 2006. I was a freshman in 2007. So when I was in 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, I was out there watching you be the quarterback of the Ramblers.
Yeah, I think that's that's one of the fun things about prep is that you always have that. There's like layering in of generations in classes where I grew up going to vet stadium watching Ed Hinkle, Eric Carlson, Bob Sanders, all those guys, and then to come up and to be able to be playing, and that there's 8th graders and 9th graders, there's ball boys, kids that are going to parochial schools, and they're just so excited to be on the sidelines, and they put on the jersey and they're ball boys, and to know that there's younger kids out there. That's one of the special things about prep is there's that constant layering of generations.
And I think it's neat that you recognizing that when you're at prep and you see those kids there, and it's almost like a continuing on of passing of the torch to that next generation. And I see it now with those kids on the sideline, high-fiving the ball boys and continuing that on.
Yeah, I think when you've been on the other side of that, when you've been that 8th grader, 7th grader, like looking up to those guys like they're gods, when you're put in that position of, hey, I'm a starter or I'm playing, and now I see these little kids, the memories of that just flood back, and you can't help but give high fives and give them gloves and play catch with them or something like that. Because you think what a difference that made to me when I was that age, throwing with Eric Carlson, helping him get warmed up for a football playoff game.
Yeah.
That was the coolest thing in the whole world to me. So
absolutely. Yeah, and it's great to see that stuff continuing on. And this is actually a cool kind of full circle moment too, because it was about 3 years ago, me and you were just kind of reconnecting. We had lunch, and I told you about, hey, I'm going to be starting a podcast for prep. And I remember you just gave me some feedback and some good advice, just on podcasting and whatnot, just from your perspective. And it's kind of cool. 3 years later, here we are sitting together as you as one of the guests.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun listening to the episodes. I remember hearing those first couple and talking about it, even before the first episode is published, kind of, you and I had talked before that and kicking around just our love for podcasts and learning and talking to people and gaining some experiences and full circle moment for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I appreciate you being a listener, and you probably know that the kind of the style and how I set it up. It's always fun to reflect a little bit in the beginning here for people who are familiar with you or maybe not. Can you maybe share with us about your experience with prep? Maybe, first off, why did you even decide to attend prep? What's your background there?
Yeah, so the word decision wasn't really in my past. The decision to attend prep, that was decided for me, probably before I was born. I'm sure before I was even born. My dad graduated from prep. He was class of 72, and his dad went to prep. So for me, there wasn't much of a choice.
Yeah.
Even to the extent of we would have shadow days. I went to grade school at St. Peter's over here, real close, and we would have different shadow days. We would spend a day going, the whole class would go to Mercier's Prep, and then the whole class would go to a different school, and then they would have a day where people could kind of go to public schools or wherever they were thinking about going, and then the whole class would go to Prep and the girls would go to Villa. I was only allowed to actually go on one of those. I wasn't allowed to go on the Mercier's tour. I wasn't allowed to go on the McDowell tour or the Erie High or Central tour or anything like that. So I was the lone person in the class.
No free days off of school. They all knew where you were going.
They knew. I mean, I was when I was in grade school, I'd walk over here and go to the weight room and kind of just
that's cool.
Just hang out with the guys, and it was quite the experience. So. No, I didn't have a choice.
There was no choice.
That's how I ended up at Prep. My dad always said, and he would tell parents, long after I left Prep, who were considering sending their sons to Prep, he would tell them it's not a 4-year decision. It's a 40-year decision. That was one of his lines, and the other line he would say is, your 14-year-old doesn't know what's best for him. That's the one he would use.
Love it.
And I think it's true. Having kids now, I know that it's true.
Right, yeah. Especially at that age. I mean, yes, you want them to feel maybe a part of that decision, but at the same time, they're 13, 14 years old, or what do they really know?
Yeah, I mean, the benefit of hindsight is a gigantic benefit, and to know what kind of a background and what kind of an upbringing Prep helps and Villa help to give young men and women it's invaluable, and you don't know that at 14 or 15 going in.
Yeah,
there's just no way that you can know.
So you mentioned hindsight, and when you think about your experience at Prep, I mean, what was it for you that really stands out? I mean, favorite memories as a student. What are some things that you look back on and you appreciate?
Yeah, like there are fun memories, like pep rallies. Those were always fun. And back in the days when they would buy one of the old cars and spray paint it up for the Prep and McDowell game, and everyone would get their turn with the sledgehammer. Some of those old pep rally memories, the fun things like running down the hall at lunch. Those are pretty keystone memories.
Those kids nowadays, they don't even know what that means that we're saying, because they don't understand.
Don't know that feeling. One day, it's imagine the running of the bulls.
That's right.
With concrete or stone walls, and
back then we didn't have cameras in the hallways to help police any of this.
There was no policing.
No.
It was full go.
That's right.
And I remember my freshman year, I had second lunch, and I remember that because that was the lunch where most of the upperclassmen had at the time. Somehow I just fell into that.
Yeah.
And I was like, I had no idea what was going on those first couple of days.
Go hide in a corner somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. Just kind of try to blend in a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there are those fun memories.
Yeah.
Other memories that I have that are, to be honest, more foundational are things like being taught by Mrs. Mullen, Mr. Shar, and the action verbs, the punch, gouge, kick. I'll never forget those, and his love for Duke football, which is traditionally terrible and hysterical to talk about. Mr. Achille was a really big impact on me because he was the freshman liaison, and I always remember him prepping us for the first pep rally and prepping us for those all of your firsts that you would experience at Prep.
Right.
And the other thing was Mr. Achille, which I use today, and I think about today even as mental arithmetic. And part of being at Prep is having the bar set so high. And he would test us. We would have time tests of just all you had to do was look at it and know the answer. We would go down through hundreds and hundreds of those. And now being in finance, but at that time, that was a kind of a keystone memory for me, just having that bar set so high. Father Mike is another memory for me. My senior year was his first year here, and I had known him from just some family friends and whatnot around Blessed Sacrament. But I had a study hall. There was like a group of 5 or 6 guys in his office for a study hall during my senior year, and conversations that we had were amazing, just about family and faith and his background and getting to know each other. He continues to be one of my good friends today. So that was really foundational to me. But yeah, I mean, there are silly and fun memories. Of course, all the sports memories that you know plenty about. And but then the more foundational memories for me are what happened with the teachers and in the class. So.
Yeah, same for me. You know, it's not necessarily the one event that happened. It's almost just the accumulation of time that I had, you know, in this building. And to your point, the great teachers that we got to have here, and you know, memories with classmates, the running of the bulls down to the cafeteria.
That's really what it was. The other thing that stuck out to me when I went here was I had friends that went to other schools, and they were only required to do 2 years of math or 3 years of math, and you know, 3 years of science, and I remember thinking like, man, they're pretty tough on us. We got to do 4 years of every core subject, you know. Where there are kids at other schools that they get out at like 11:30 during their senior year, and I'm like, what are we doing here? You know? But that paid off.
Yeah, hindsight, right?
That certainly paid off. That's hindsight.
Yep, exactly. Now at the time, you know, we just can't wait to get out of high school, and I know, so, you know, we're recording this right at the end of the school year, right? So those seniors are finishing up their finals and they're getting ready to be done, and, you know, my message to them was just basically savor these moments. There's so many alums I talked to that they said, I'll do anything, just have one more day as a student at prep again, and, you know, that time just goes so quick.
That's right.
And, you know, beyond, you know, the memories and whatnot, what were some of the ways that prep helped prepare you, you know, for your career? You mentioned faith, and you mentioned you're obviously, from your background, CFO now, so the academic side of things with Mr. Kelly you were talking about. Are there other components too in that you look at that help prep helped you?
Sure. I mean, I you know, the blocking and tackling of the subjects and the math and the English and sciences and all those things, that's wonderful. The aggregate of all of them, when I think about it, the phrase that comes to mind is that it set a high bar. It set an expectation of excellence that we strove for every single day, up to like top buttons being buttoned, ties being on, had to have a bell, you know, little things like that, that you had to do 180 days every year. Things like that, you know, that's really what carried into my adult life. And, you know, that translates into other things in business and family and all those things. You know, at prep, you had to spend 4 years essentially doing the right thing all the time. And being well-dressed and coming prepared. And when you didn't, which I didn't all the time, you felt it. You really felt it. You felt it from classmates, from other players on your team, teammates, from you know, your teachers even, where they wouldn't get down on you. They just knew that you had more in you. And there was almost like, we know you can do it. We just wish you would apply yourself more. You know, I heard a lot of that for sure. But yeah, that knowing that you can reach that bar. Really, when I think about prep in a nutshell, it is that high standard of excellence for an extended period of time. You can't help but carry that into your adult life. You can't help but carry that into college. And then, you know, when you have a family, it's stuff that you don't even think about at that point. It's just muscle memory. You know, it's mental memory. We've done it so often. But I know people, adults now, that they never had that high bar experience. You know, they never experienced that, and a lot of them wish they had.
And talk about a formidable years, right? Between the ages of 13, 14 to 18. I mean, a lot of growing up during those years, a lot of big changes. So to have that demand from your school of the standard of excellence, right, that we had to have exemplify every day.
And there's you know, that's about the age. Growing up, you have your parents' influence, your immediate family influence. But outside of that, and you know, there's not that much high standard influence in your life other than your immediate family. You get to prep, it's 14, 15. You've got a group of coaches, you have a group of teachers, you have a headmaster.
Yeah.
That now there's this extended network of influence that is expecting more of you.
Yeah.
And that's jarring for a kid. For me, I remember that was jarring. But I come to appreciate it. And now being a father, I'm trying to give my kids influences outside of home that are going to hold them to those high standards. Because, my dad and my mom, they could tell me something 1,000 times. But when Coach Mish or Coach Moffitt or one of my teachers told me the same exact thing, it was a totally different story.
That's so true. That's so funny.
For sure.
Did you have Mr. Del Rio as a teacher?
I did, yeah.
So, quick story, you were talking about that, button in the top button. It made me remember. So I had it my senior year. It's first day, senior year. I walk up to the third floor with my shirt untucked. It was first period I had him. My tie wasn't done yet. And it's maybe 7:50, 8 o'clock. The first bell was maybe 8:12. So I still had some time. He sees me in the hallway, me and my classmate, Max. And he yells at us that if we're going to be in his hallway, coming to class, we need to be dressed and ready to go. And I tell you what, every day after that, shirt was tucked in, tie was tied, and I was ready for his class no matter what time it was I was going up there.
You set the expectation, and you only cross Mr. Del Rio one time.
That's exactly right.
He let you know about it for sure.
And if you did twice, you never got to tell the story of it.
Never got to tell the story.
Oh, that's funny. Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk to you about football too.
Sure.
Like I mentioned in the very beginning, you're someone that I grew up going to Vet Stadium and watching you play for the Ramblers and the classic vintage orange that, the jerseys and whatnot. So you played for Mish, and then you got to coach with him later on as well. Can you talk to us a little about that experience? What it was like maybe for you going from a player to coaching for him or coaching with him, and maybe just your experience with prep football in general that you've been able to have.
Sure, yeah. My experience with prep football is, I don't have a memory far back enough that doesn't line up with prep football.
Yeah.
It was kind of what I grew up with, and more vivid memories are of Mish's time there, of 99, 2000, and beyond, just as a little kid. And growing up that way, being that close to him, and my dad and Mish were good friends. My dad was kind of on the coaching staff, kind of on the sidelines. We were there enough that everyone called him coach. So being that close to it when I actually got the opportunity to play, it was everything I could have imagined.
Yeah.
It was an honor. It was an honor to wear the orange and black. It was an honor to run out there. But you knew it came with some hard work. Nothing was going to be given for free. No positions were given out. You had to work every single day, summer and the off season, and group of kids, we would ride our bikes down to the field house with Coach Heidelberg, and we'd be doing plyometrics in June and July, getting ready for the next year, and that's just what it was for prep football.
Yeah.
Playing for Mish, one of the things that was really important to him and still is, and really stood out to me is his emphasis on why he was doing what he was doing. It wasn't the wins. It wasn't state championship. It wasn't rings. Those things are great, but he was really doing it, and he still does it because he loves the kids.
Yeah.
And he wants them to have a great experience in high school. He wants them to be the best version of themselves that they can be, not just on the football field, but in life. And that carries over, as we saw, to championships. That carries over to teams being very close-knit, to wanting to hang out with each other outside of football, which is pretty rare. But having that experience with Mish really taught me a lot. And it bled over into when I started coaching with him, getting a peek behind the curtain and getting to know the man a little bit more as a man, not just Coach Mish, and all the coaches back then. And all the coaches. So, and they all bought in. They all bought into that philosophy of we're here for them. We're in service to the players and their parents. And that's really what it was. And when I coached with him, we had great successes. But it was still that we want to do really well, but we want to do well as a byproduct of what we're doing in these kids' lives.
Right. Yeah, I just talked to him, shortly after that we announced that he accepted the job to come back and be a head coach again, and that's immediately what he talked about, is just how much he's called to do what he does. And again, it's not about the championships. Yeah, he's a coach. They're football. That's his conduit in which he gets to reach those kids in that group.
Exactly.
And he's on the senior leadership team here at Prep, so he gets to see it as a 360 view of the whole school and be a part of those decision-making conversations for the school. So couldn't emphasize that enough, what Mish means to Prep, not just his legendary of state championships, but the day-to-day grind of being with the kids, being with the coaches, and doing that.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we worked hard, and when I coached, we expected hard work out of our players, but we also had fun.
Yeah.
We also had fun. A lot of my good memories are of some of the pranks from football camp. I think he probably fired Coach G 3 or 4 times, and they would run off the field and yell at each other, and the infamous asking the freshmen and sophomores to turn on the lights at the field house to go find the light switch.
Right. Yeah.
And one year, we're screaming up at a freshman who's going to look for the lights, and he can't find it anywhere because it's getting dark out, and there are no lights in the field house.
Right, correct. Yeah, anybody hasn't been there. There's no lights.
There are no lights there. Some stuff like that, But one of the things at Camp Notre Dame, I remember that seniors ate last, and that was something that stood out, and that's ended up being a Simon Sinek book, Leaders Eat Last.
Right.
So yeah, all good memories though, for sure.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I knew you coached, and I didn't realize until reading your bio that you were here all 4 years coaching when I was here. Which is pretty cool. We talked before we were recording about some of the seniors like Luke Drusilla, Tyler Parsons, a bunch of Mario Sanders, a bunch of the guys who were classmates of mine that, was on the football team. I just played my freshman year, so, I at least can say that.
Well, I came up with some of those guys because I had coached JVs for a couple of years, and then I moved up to varsity. So
that's cool.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time with those guys.
That's cool. Awesome. Well, it's really cool reflecting with you about the time at Prep, and you've done so much in your career too, and in your work. And one of the things I wanted to talk to you about too was some of your mission work. The faith component of your life and what that meant to you. Can you tell us about your time serving as a full-time missionary, in the Dominican Republic? Kind of what drew you to that path, and what did you learn through that experience?
Yeah. So my experience with Meeting God on Missions, it started out, my mom and stepdad, they had gone to the Dominican Republic and Haiti for many mission trips, short-term trips, just a week long.
Yeah.
And they had a great experience. They loved it. They left me back to take care of things at home. And as a teenager, 19, early 20-somethings, my version of taking care of the house was a little bit different than what they had in mind, I think. But they would always tell me, you got to go on one of these trips. You got to go on one of these trips. And we attended First Alliance Church up on Zimmerly Road. And Jim McDonald, the founder of Meeting God in Missions from Edinburgh, he taught a Sunday school class out there for years and years. And my mom and stepdad, they attended the class. And every once in a while, I'd go with them to that class. And Jim would always rag on me and say, "When's the prodigal son coming home?" And he'd have all these little barbs at me and little jabs.
Yeah.
And so my mom asked me in 2011, late 2011, "Hey, I really want you to go." And I said, "Fine. Just to shut you guys up, I'll go. But I don't want to hear about it after this." Right?
Yeah.
She paid for my passport. She did all the details. I probably even packed my suitcase for me. And I went not really wanting to go, not having a clue what was going to happen. And my life totally changed in about 24, 48 hours.
Wow.
I went from the night before our flight, I was out with friends. And next morning I get on a flight from Buffalo going down to Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic. And the next night I'm in a group of people and somehow God really revealed himself to me in a way that I'd never experienced before, and he totally changed my life. My faith had been a vicarious faith through my mom and through others, through people like Father Mike, people that I really respected, but deep down I'd always say, there's no way I can achieve that. There's just, I've already sinned more than my mom has in her whole life. Even though I was baptized in a Baptist church when I was a child, but I had always lived with that vicarious faith, and going down to the Dominican for some reason, and I don't know why, but for some reason I saw a face of God that I never had seen before, and he really revealed himself to me in a way that I'd never experienced before, and it totally changed my life. It did. Being with a group of people that were block layers, and they were tough guys, and they were, Jim McDonald, he was not a quiet soul. He was like a very harsh, he was a basketball coach. He's like a Bobby Knight, Christian version of Bobby Knight. But before he was a Christian, he was Bobby Knight. He was a tough coach. He was a chair thrower. And to know those guys walked in their faith and had a relationship with Jesus, somehow to me it made it more accessible. It brought the boat a little bit closer to the dock. It wasn't, I got to become a superstar all of a sudden. It's like, we're all screwed up. Yeah. We're all not right. But that's why we need him. Yeah. That's why we need him. And so my first trip was January 2012. My life was totally changed. And just so happens that the next day after that, kind of our first mission day, I met a girl. She walked in to the mission. She was the translator, and now she's my wife. So my life changed in about 48 hours. Yeah. More than I could have ever imagined.
What a cool story. Yeah, what an amazing story. I mean, I think it's so cool how God meets us where we are. So for you, you had to go down to the Dominican Republic to have an experience like that. But that's not everyone's story. Not anybody listening maybe doesn't have a faith like yours that you're sharing. You don't have to go on a mission trip to experience God, right? It can be right at your home at your kitchen table.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's sometimes we're really willing. Sometimes it's God, I'm here. I want to do this. And sometimes we're not there, but it doesn't matter. Right. It doesn't matter because God's going to reveal himself to you, to everybody, in a way that is at a time that they need. Right. And I think God is constantly knocking at our door, wanting us to open it up, wanting us to experience him in a new way. And for some reason, in some places, that's where they really see him. For some people, they go to trips in Africa. For some people, it's right here at home. For some, there's so many conversion stories just right here at home. Yeah. And I've been a part of some of those in my own living room of people coming over and but it's often at a time where we are vulnerable. It's often at a time where we're looking out, where we're reaching out for help. Yeah. I don't, you have to come to a time and a place in your life where you don't have all the answers. And that's really where God works. Yeah. That's where God works. And that's where I was certainly in 2012, for sure.
I was going to say, have some kids and you'll figure out real quick. You don't have it all figured out.
That is exactly right. That's exactly right.
Yeah, you got a crew. You got 3 of them. That's awesome.
Yeah, you really, you if you didn't believe in original sin, just have kids. Then you believe, like, I didn't do this. This came with the package.
That's right.
This lying and
it's amazing. I'd say to Amber, I'm like, we did not teach them this. How did they pick this up? Where did they figure this out? And we're like, I don't know. I mean,
happened a long time
understand
ago.
We're sinners and we're not perfect, but still, there's times they say stuff. We're like, how do they know that?
Yeah. It happened a long time ago.
That's right.
It's not you, Jimmy.
Some of the things definitely me. Yeah. Oh, that's funny. And that's great too. It's such a cool testimony to that story that you meeting Dina there, being the translator, and then she becomes your wife down the road. And what amazing how God works.
Yeah, there was quite a few, there's the journey in between that point and today. There's quite a few ups and downs, but it was a great period. I was there for a week in January of 2012, and I went back and spent a whole summer, and that's where really my wife and I kind of got to know each other at that time. And then I was invited to live down there full time by Jim, and at that point, Dina and I were married down there, and I spent about 2 years living there and working there. There, and just an amazing experience. But as much as I wasn't ready to meet her, she had I not really had my experience, she would have nothing to do with me. She would have had nothing to do with me.
That's funny. Woman of high standards, right?
High standards.
That's
sure.
good.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yep.
So you were down there, you said, for 2 years. That's so talk about your transition then going back to the States, I guess. Was that always the plan, is you would spend 2 years, or was that a little bit of spontaneity of you were ready to come home? Talk about maybe that transition then. Your career.
So we started out not really having a long-term plan. We knew that this is what God was calling us to for this season, for that season, and that has been our MO as a couple. It's been, we've kind of got this short-term thing, but at any moment, God could move us. He could reveal something to us, and we know that that's where we need to go after much prayer and thought and everything.
For sure.
But yeah, so we didn't know. For all we knew, we were going to live down there and never come back. After a couple of years, I had some school to finish back here at home. And for some reason, we didn't know at the time, but for some reason, we just felt like we were going to at some point establish more of a foundation in the States. Her visa process was taking a little bit longer than we thought. And so I ended up coming back in the fall of 2014 and re-enrolled in Gannon to finish some classes. And, at the time we didn't really know, and we weren't that thrilled about it, about like me coming back here. Her visa wasn't even complete, so she was still down there.
Wow.
We were married, living in separate countries for a long time.
Yeah.
But in hindsight, talk about hindsight, I came back in the fall, and my dad, thinking about the memory of me going down, he wasn't all too thrilled with me moving down there. Let's just say that. Not because he had bad things to say about the country. It could have been anywhere.
Sure.
But it wasn't me with him at, here in Erie, going to games together, because that's what he knew. That's what we knew. We did everything together.
Right.
And that for him was a great comfort, and for me also. So for me to move to a third world country, my dad never had a passport. I can't remember the last time he would have been on an airplane.
Yeah.
That was a big deal for him, and he wasn't that thrilled with me. So I come back, and we were able to really reconcile. And that was a great experience that I had. And he ended up passing away that September, after less than a month after I got back.
Wow.
Suddenly.
Gosh.
And so I know, looking back, it took me a while to process that, but looking back, I know without a doubt that God called us back and me back here for that time, for that specific purpose, to reconcile with my dad. So some things like that, you really don't know why, but after prayer and thought, if you know that God's calling you to something, you really have to have the courage to go do it, and the benefits come on the other end of it. So but that's what eventually led us back here. Yeah,
it can definitely be difficult, when you're used to kind of the same old routine. To your dad's perspective, you guys go to games, you're in your area, you do this together, family dinners, all that, and then something completely changes that plan. It does take that adjustment time, but it's awesome to hear that you were willing to listen to the Lord's calling for you to come back to Erie, because obviously he knew the plans of what was going to happen.
Sure did.
But you were there for him during that time, and that's amazing.
Yeah.
So you're back here in Erie, you're in the States. You re-enroll in Gannon. You're finishing that up. How'd you then get connected with National Logistics Network?
Yeah, so I was originally with Josh and Anthony, kind of on the startup, and at that point you're chief everything officers, and you're just you're learning as you go. You know? And so
what a cool experience.
It was very cool, challenging but very cool. Yeah. Starting out with them, and so my path with National Logistics, and Gannon, and then meeting God in Missions, it's kind of, I almost went from one thing to the next, back to National. And so when I ended up back with those guys, just as a full-time employee, knowing, hey, these are my good buddies, and I think I understand this business a little bit, and I've got some life experience now that I didn't have back then, thankfully.
Right.
That I was able to contribute to what they were doing.
Yeah.
So it was my time with them was great.
How many years in total with National Logistics?
With National, probably 8 years off and on, because I had a stint at First Alliance Church. It was, for me, that was a time of I think that we really think that God is calling us into ministry.
Yeah.
We don't know exactly what that looks like right now, and we had some influences in our life that there was an opening, and it was hey, this might be something for you.
Right.
We can kind of see the trajectory that you're on, and there's an opening here, and if you want to step into it and see what God has for it, let's do it.
Yeah.
That was really our call into ministry. After about 2 years in full-time ministry, we really realized that full-time ministry, paid ministry, wasn't for us. It is for some people, a lot of people.
Certainly.
But for us, knowing after 2 years our experiences and kind of just our own hearts, we really knew that our role in ministry was on a volunteer basis, and it was giving of ourselves freely, without strings attached, without depending on congregation for a paycheck.
Yeah.
Which some people, that's totally fine, and for them that's great. I think it's wonderful.
Yeah.
For us in our hearts, we were just called to something different, and so that was that. We know we're going to be in
that window.
We know we're going to be in ministry. We just don't know
Yeah.
exactly what it looks like. And Josh and Anthony were gracious enough to say, hey, we want you. We want you here.
Please come back. Yeah, we need all hands on deck.
Yeah.
No, just kidding. Those guys are great.
Yeah.
I know Josh has been supportive of Prep through the years with you there as well, and it's been cool to see. So, now you're at Baldwin Bros, Baldwin Brothers. Pretty cool. You mentioned in the bio, it's a 5th generation nationwide real estate company. So I guess now, what's it like operating a business with such deep roots, and especially with it being, here in the area that the operations is based out of?
It's an honor for me. Every day I pinch myself.
Yeah.
Just to be plugged into something that it has been so long standing, and there's such a great family and a great organization that I really feel honored to be a part of it. The timing of me joining them, my predecessor was there for many years, and his predecessor was there for many years, so it's not a very high turnover place, but it's an honor to be plugged in with them and to have them invite me in to join what they're already doing. It's nice to plug into an operation that's so long-standing.
Right.
Part of my DNA is entrepreneurial, and it's startup culture, and it's and that I do always have that part of me. But it's nice to be a part of a 5th generation. 1894 it was started.
Wow.
So to be a part of that and to really learn from them in the real estate industry and the things that they've been able to accomplish are amazing. So to me, it's an honor.
That's really cool. And I would imagine there's an interesting, in your position, there's a leadership component as well, I'm sure, right? And so how do you balance your duties of the financial strategy, being the CFO and the controller? How do you balance that with people and purpose in your leadership to kind of be able to create this culture that is ultimately going to lead to the company being successful?
Yeah, so whenever you're in a role, whenever I'm in a role, I have to take into it my own personalities and the way that I'm wired. I'm more of a process person than a people person. Mm-hmm. You always have those two elements, right? Process and people. I'm much more system oriented to begin with. I have to work on the people, my people, the people skills and that part. That, to me, that doesn't come very natural. For some people, and I work with them and I know them, even outside of work, they're the people. They're the party.
Yeah.
They're the people that you really want to be around. And they're great with people. But the process and the system, we'll kind of figure it out.
Yeah.
And so, in my career, I have always been I really want to start with the system and understand that and how do things work and really get the right system in place. And then for me personally, working on people and working with people, understanding that these are people. They have homes that they go to and families and kids and hobbies and weekends. It's not just what they do at work. And they're not just a number. They're an actual person with feelings and a personality we need them to do a job, but we also want them to do it really well. And we want them to actually enjoy work.
Yeah.
So just to separate the two of process and people, it's just a non-starter. Those two things have to come together. And so, understanding that everyone's wired differently, my approach to people is very much I really like to get to know people and what makes them tick.
Yeah.
What energizes them. What do they really not like to do at all? What can't they stand? What kind of what are they, a people person or are they a process person? You
right.
know? So it's very much, my approach is very much good to great, and we've got this bus and the bus is moving and we've got a bunch of these seats. The first goal is to get the right people on the bus.
Right.
The next goal is to get the right people in the right seats, you know, and not everybody belongs on every bus, but there's a bus out there for somebody. Every person, there's a role and there's an organization out there for everybody. But it's not good enough to just have the right people on the bus. You also have to have them slotted correctly.
Yeah.
You have to have people enjoying coming to work. You could have two people who can't stand coming to work because they're both doing the opposite of what they really enjoy. And it's as simple as, over time, flipping some roles, flipping some responsibilities. And now all of a sudden you have two people that are rock stars and that they enjoy coming to work.
Yeah.
So it's blending of those two. And that's I enjoy the finance. The accounting, it's great. I really enjoy seeing things play out and doing projections and
Sure.
And really telling a story of an organization through its financials. So that's really a lot of my role, is to not just crunch numbers and be a controller and do accounting and make sure assets equals liabilities and equity. But what does this tell us?
Yeah.
What does it tell us about where we've been? What does it tell us about where we are? And how can we make it and help it to tell us where we're going in the future?
Right.
I really like to turn financials into stories. And so doing that and then bringing people along in the journey.
Yeah. It's intentionality, right? It's slowing. I mean, you can tell that the place you're coming from is with a good heart, right? So as you said, I'm not really the people person so much. That's the area I got to work on. But I think when you are somebody, it doesn't matter necessarily personality, but when you're somebody who has a good heart and you care about the person you're sitting in front of, and you're coming from a good place, and you're trying to be solution-minded, to work with them, to figure this out together, I think good things come with that. And good things might mean that person's not the right person in this bus, or they're not the right person in this seat on this bus. They need to go to a different seat to make this bus go in the right direction. So yeah, I really like everything you just said there with that.
Yeah, I've had both of those conversations for sure. They're not easy, but when you come at it from understanding the person across the table is a person.
Yeah.
They're not just an employee, they're not just a number, but they're going to go home to a family and break bad news, and how can I do this in a way that actually honors them?
Right.
And you're right about intentionality. I mean, you're not just going to show up to work today and isolate today and not connect it to tomorrow and the next day and not think about those things.
Yeah.
You're going to have a hard time finding success, or you're just extremely lucky. I don't want to plan on being lucky.
That's right.
You know.
Yeah, it's nice when that happens, but that's
Sure.
not something we can count on.
Yep, that's right.
And I would say also, a lot of the stuff you're talking about right now, that's what separates you, for any of our listeners, from being a leader or just being somebody who's going to come in and clock out where you work. I mean, that intentionality, that focus, that really, being able to grow as a leader, all the things that, you're talking about there, and figuring out how that works for you.
Yeah, and leadership is influence. And when you're not being a leader for leader's sake, but you're being a leader by doing the right thing day in and day out.
Right.
One of the things that I learned when I was really young is champions are made when no one's watching. That counts in sports, but it also counts in your career and in business. It's the day in and day out, small deposits, slowly digging the well, right?
Yep.
That over time will gain you success, but it will also, a byproduct of that is that you will gain influence, and leadership is influence.
Yep.
You can be a leader at any role, at any level, in any organization. If there's ever an employee or a coworker or even a boss gets the inkling of, I want to know what he or she says about this. I want to know what they think about this, because their voice matters. Their voice counts to me. That's leadership.
Yep.
That's leadership.
And it's funny, me and you were just very in sync. The exact point I was going to make is that leadership isn't about position or title. So no matter what role you're at in your current position, you can be a leader right where you are, and start that process of doing leadership type actions and doing leadership type planning and thinking and working with those around you to have that influence, as you say.
Sure. I mean, there is an element of leadership in a position.
Certainly.
There's
Absolutely.
definitely that element. You can't or should not put all your eggs in that basket, though.
Yeah.
It should not or cannot be, and it's been my goal to not, this is my choice and we're going to do it because I'm the leader.
Yeah.
Sometimes in a room where there's differing opinions, the decision has to be made.
Right.
Somebody has to sign off on it, and those are hard decisions often, and that's where a leader steps up. But it's not just because they say. That's like a pull only if you have to card.
Yeah.
The much more preferable route is the moral leadership and the integrity leadership of, hey, this is where we're going. I hope you join. This is the direction that we're going in. And man, it would be amazing if you jumped on this bus with us.
Yep.
But that's built over time with gaining trust and gaining some authority through your actions and your example.
Right.
That's the much more difficult path, but it's the longer serving path.
Yeah, certainly. And I think it's a testament to, all the things you've been talking about through this podcast, being able to be somebody to step up and listen to God and make the right decisions and honor people, like you were saying, when you're having those conversations, difficult conversations, right? It's all part of being a leader, and for those decisions, they take time and they take relationship building and all those different factors you just mentioned. Well, and another thing I want to talk to you about too, you and Dina. You launched the restaurant, Dina's, which is inside the Flagship City Food Hall. Can you talk to us about what that was like for you guys to take that leap? Maybe for people who aren't as familiar with it, what year did you open? And then what inspired you guys to start this business?
Yeah, so we opened in 2021, and coming out of COVID, well, even before that, me, like, just as a entrepreneur and a person that likes to eat, I go down to the Dominican to live, and I'm with my wife and her family, and I'm like, man, this food is amazing.
Right.
Growing up, I grew up on pizza and chicken fingers and fries, and that was kind of my life. It was like concession food.
Yeah.
It was pepperoni balls and and
of
Pepsis.
Course.
So I go down, and it's authentic and it's home cooked, and I ate while I lived there and while I visited on trips even before. I ate more than I ever have in my whole life, and I lost weight.
Wow.
Because the food is authentic and it's real and it's made that day, and there's no chemicals and there's nothing added in for preservatives or anything like that. And I remember thinking to myself, man, we need one of these while I was living there.
Yeah.
So I would always, kind of jab my wife and like just kind of egg her on, like, hey, we should really do something. And she was always shutting me down all the time. Because
by we, you meant, you should really
do this. You should do this. Yeah, I'm signing you up for this. Yeah, sure. But then COVID came around, and COVID was really tough. It was really tough in America, for sure. But thankfully, we live in a country that is set up and had the infrastructure to help people.
Yeah.
Whereas third world countries didn't. In the same way that we were social distancing and everything like that here, and people were being shut down and sent home, and stores weren't opening, that was happening all over the world. And a country like the Dominican Republic, they don't have the social safety net, the trampoline to get people back up. And so that was really hard on that community and my wife's family.
Yeah.
And so during COVID, I remember her and I having another conversation. It was kind of me jabbing her again. And this time she didn't really jab back. I was like, oh, that's interesting.
Right.
So it's something that she had brought back up to me of, hey, if we did this, I think we could really help our community and our family and friends who are really struggling right now. And so it's something that we began to pray about and think about, and just kind of throw out there of, hey, if this is something that you want to happen or that's going to happen, we're open to it. We don't know exactly what it means. Yeah. But we're open to it. And I had talked with John Persinger, who had just come off his mayoral race. Yep. And he was the CEO at the EDDC, and he and I talked a few times, but nothing really, nothing permanent or nothing really materialized at the time. And then he called me out of the blue one day and said, "Hey, are you guys serious about this? If you are, have your wife cook a meal for our board and kind of explain your concept to us, and we'll see if when there's an opening, what can happen." And we did that. They were blown away by the food, and there just happened to be an opening not long before we opened. Most of the kitchens down there, they had over a year to prepare. They had gone through like a screening process and everything, and it was highly publicized at the time.
Yeah.
And we didn't really enter that conversation until about July, maybe even August, and we opened in November.
Oh my gosh.
That year. So it was very much we got to do this.
Wow.
We set out saying, "Hey, this is something we're open to."
Yeah.
Now we gotta go with it. So
wow.
That's kind of how that happened. But it's her show. She's amazing at it. It's what she is the yin to my yang. She is the people person.
Yeah.
She is the name rememberer, meal rememberer. She can see 10 people in a row, and she'll know exactly who they are, their kids. She'll ask about their kids.
Wow.
She'll remember the last meal that they had. And when I'm down there, if I have to stand at the register, I'm like, how do you even know these people?
Yeah, right.
She's met people that know me, that I used to know, and she's like good friends with them now.
Yeah. And you're like still trying to remember, what's their name?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's she loves it. It's amazing to see her in that environment, and it's a great thing. It's interesting because I grew up my whole life in Erie, played football at Prep, coached at Prep, lots of success here. I come back home and now I'm Dina's husband.
Her name's on the restaurant, and you're just along for the ride.
But I like it that way.
That's right. Amen. So. And it's a restaurant that is so well received by the community. It seems like all the support you guys have had, for especially the location, and how exciting all the things happening in downtown Erie as well. I mean, it's just helping the momentum, I'm sure, of your restaurant with everything going on. Yeah,
there's definitely a lot of activity. There's a lot of buzz about what's happening downtown, and it's fun and exciting to be a part of that. And you're right, the public has received the food well, let's say.
Yeah.
People really enjoy it, and it's a lot of fun to see people from Prep walk down, and teachers from Gannon, and people at Erie Insurance are always down there. And then, she does catering, and we cater quite often for the Erie Seawolves. You imagine a lot of Dominican baseball players haven't had a home cooked meal in a long time.
Oh, I bet.
And so we cater for them quite often, but also organizations and parties and things like that. So
yeah,
it's a lot of fun. It was a lot of work at the beginning, and it's a lot of fun to see her in that element and to see her succeed. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Well, congratulations on all the success you guys have had there.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, I've had the food. It's delicious. But yeah, for any of our listeners who who haven't been, definitely go down, check it out, because it's delicious food. And like I said, I'm not always as good with the names of it, but I love it. It's good.
Whatever you have, it'll be good.
That's exactly right.
And it's the picky people pleaser. Even kids, picky eater kids.
Yep,
love her food. So.
That's awesome. Well, we're winding down on the podcast here. Got a couple more questions for you. If you got the time, you're available. But one of the questions I wanted to ask you about is, I'll kind of put them together a little bit. We've talked about a lot on this episode. You've done so many great things, from quarterback, prep football, coaching, all the stuff in your career. Just recently talking about Dina's. But at the end of your bio, you say your most important role, husband and dad. How do you, a busy guy, your wife, how do you guys keep your family at the center of so much going on? And then if you can add into that question too, talking about being a man of faith as well. Because obviously that's such a big part of this conversation and your life as a whole. But what does it mean to you to be a man of faith in business and in today's world? And then also, kind of combine that faith and family, I guess, kind of question here about what how you embody yourself.
Sure. I mean, to answer your first question with keeping family first with such a busy schedule and so many things going on, for me, it's often having to really compartmentalize and to not confuse emotions with ideas. A lot of times we mix those two, and if we're not careful, it just happens naturally where I was at work and this happened and it's something that's on my mind, and I take that home with me.
Yeah.
Or I was at home and this thing happened with my kids and it's really upsetting, and that bleeds over into work. But compartmentalizing doesn't mean I'm a different person. It means that I've separated the emotion from the idea of what's going on, or I can hold in my head this thing that is happening at work or this thing is happening at home without having the emotion of that cross over into the next. Knowing that when I go back there, that I need to pick that back up and I need to deal with it then. And that's sometimes good. Sometimes taking bad things.
Yeah.
But it's sometimes taking really good things. If I have a great day at work and we're really killing it and we just crossed a milestone or something like that, and I go home and my wife's had a really hard day, I really need to separate that emotion from what's happened at work, from the idea to be there for her and to listen to her. She doesn't care about how great my day was. She had a terrible day.
You're right.
Or with the kids and any other venture that we're in. So really, that's kind of it's taking a pause. I've got about a 30-minute drive home every day, so that's a nice drive for me to just decompress a little bit and to really separate out, to try to not make those things blend. The emotions of those things blend. And
that can be something that's very difficult for some. I don't know why I have the ability to compartmentalize also, where I just kind of put things in boxes. Like, this is my work box. Drive home, now I'm in dad mode, I'm in family mode, and that can be something that's difficult for people to be able to do, is have those emotions go on at work and then expect to be, super dad at home. It can be tough.
It becomes tough when you don't pick things back up over time. When you let it go and it stays gone. Yeah. But knowing I need to let this thing go right now, but as soon as I come back, I need to pick this back up and deal with it. The trouble comes in is when we let them go and we never pick them back up.
Very true.
And they just grow.
Yeah. And I think it helps too, if you're someone of faith, to be grounded in Christ, where day to day you have that time you devote to prayer, you devote to reading the Word, and you devote to just having that time spent with Christ and being able to center yourself too.
Yeah, I mean, that's, as far as faith goes, faith isn't a part of my life. I think for the believer and for the follower of Jesus, your faith isn't a religion. It's not. It's a relationship with a person, Jesus. Yeah. And that's the filter with which work happens and home happens and sports happens and every other thing. The filter is through my relationship with Christ. What does this thing look like? What does work look like? What does home life look like? Yep. It's not one of the separate ideas. It's really a lens that just covers everything. Yep.
It's not a separate compartment from everything else.
No, and it happens in the mornings. It happens with small deposits over time. I can't, the definition of a relationship is spending time with somebody, is getting to know them, and the more time I spend with God and with Jesus in my devotions, in His Word, in prayer, the more I'm going to know who He is, and it's going to really reveal more about who He is to me. I think that's what God wants from us. I think that God doesn't want to pull our arm into relationship with Him, because that's not love. Right. Love is a willingness to go there. In the good times and the bad times and the hard times, and to deal with it at a relational level. Yeah. And there's no relationship without time.
That's right.
And so it's a big one. It's a big one.
Well, that's really cool. I appreciate you sharing that all from your heart there about what that faith means in family. I know how important it is to you for your life, and I think it's something we all need reminded on. It's something we all need to hear, and I appreciate you sharing on that.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, last question for you. And what's fun about this, I mentioned in the beginning of the podcast, 3 years ago when you and I were chatting about me starting the podcast, you said, hey, it'd be really cool if you come up with some question that you ask at the end of every episode, or some point in the episode to every guest. It's very consistent, and it's something that, and I thought it was a great idea. And I start off talking, I ask everybody in the beginning, how'd you decide to attend prep or Villa? But this question at the end has become something pretty cool where I ask everybody, and I'm asking you now, if you could go back in time and knowing what you know now, talk to your classmates at your graduation from prep, what advice would you give your classmates?
Yeah, it's fun to reminisce about that. I forgot about that until you just reminded me.
Yeah.
If I could go back and talk to my classmates and really talk to myself at that time, an 18-year-old kid, I'd tell them a few things. One would be, it's good to have your plans, but hold them loosely. It's always good to have a plan. Know what the next step is, but hold it loosely so that if and when it changes, it's not devastating. It's almost expected, Yeah. I think a lot of times we can have our plans and this is exactly what we want, and when something derails us, it's so devastating because that's what we've always thought about, that's what we've always dreamed of. But when you hold those things loosely to say, okay, I'm ready for it. My cheese is moving. It's a great little book. Who moved my cheese?
Yep.
But when you start to realize that cheese is moving, you gotta go get it.
That's right.
And so to hold those plans loosely. Next, I would say one of the sayings that I really love is look back, but don't stare. It's great to look back. It's great to peek back at your past and at some memories, but not to stare and not to let your past define you. When you peek back, you can learn from it. There's a lot of things at prep when I was a student. If I was sitting there at graduation, there's a lot of things that I would want to forget. So there are some things that I really learned from, and some experiences, good or bad, that I really learned from. And it's good to peek back, but I don't want to stare. Don't let your past define you. Always look ahead. There's a reason that your windshield is much bigger than the rearview mirror. And so I think we should live that way. And then lastly, a lesson that I'm still learning on a daily basis is that you're not the captain of your ship. You're not the captain of your ship. That at the end of the day, there's a God who controls controls your life. And really wants you to give your life to him out of love. It's what we were designed for. And a lot of us think that we hold the wheel to every decision of our life, when in reality, we're not the captain, we're a passenger. And it's that hold your hands open type of life. And the great story, the David and Goliath, right? We all grow up as kids and we think we're David. We're the one yielding the stones, right? And at the end, yielding the sword. When in reality, we're not David. We're the crowd. We're the crowd. And Jesus is the David. Jesus is David. And what does the crowd do when they see David walk through to go to Goliath? They get out of the way. They let him do his thing. And a lot of us live our lives thinking that we're David. We think we're the captain of our ship. But in reality, it's really about moving back, letting the person whose job it is to take care of it, let him do it, and trusting him to do it. So that's what I would tell myself at 18, but that's what I would share with my classmates too.
Yeah, that's awesome. So many good things there that I feel inspired by just listening to that. It's so good. Thinking of ourselves as David, but really, we're the crowd. Amen to that. Well, John, this has been so much fun. I appreciate you coming into prep to record the episode of the podcast, going through all these questions with me and sharing your story and openly as well about your faith and sharing that journey with us as well. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been fun. It's been great to look back.
Yeah, I remember even just a couple months or so ago when we were scheduling this up, you sent me a picture from your office there showing some of your prep memorabilia that you had. It's cool. It's really cool. So I appreciate you, keeping that spirit of prep live on and being a part of it.
Yeah, thank you, Jimmy, and thanks for doing this too. I mean, it's great as a consumer of the podcast. It's great. It's been great for me to hear about where people are going and what they're doing, but also to get updates about the school. So thank you for what you're doing.
Yeah, no, love what I do here and I love the school. So I do it with pride and honor. So I appreciate you saying that. Cool. Thanks for coming on, John.
Thank you.